Did you know that Napoleon Bonaparte was not as short as you might think? It's a common belief that the French emperor was a rather petite figure, but that's not entirely accurate. This misconception largely arose from British propaganda, which often depicted Napoleon as a tiny tyrant to belittle his achievements. Furthermore, the difference in English and French measurements added to the confusion. You see, in French measurements, Napoleon stood at 5 feet 2 inches, which translates to about 5 feet 7 inches in English measurements, a height that was fairly average for Frenchmen in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. So, the image of Napoleon as a small man is largely a product of historical misinterpretation and exaggeration. In reality, he was no shorter than most men of his time and place. So Napoleon wasn't the diminutive figure we've been led to believe. Ever heard of ailurophobia? Napoleon had it. Now this might sound surprising, but Napoleon Bonaparte, one of the most powerful men in history, had an unusual fear cats. Indeed, it's said that this formidable conqueror would become incredibly uneasy whenever he encountered a feline. Napoleon's fear was so intense that according to some accounts he would even climb onto a chair to avoid a cat entering the room. But where did this fear originate from? Well, it's widely believed that his fear was rooted in the superstitions of his time. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, black cats were often associated with bad luck and witchcraft. These superstitions were quite prevalent and could have easily influenced Napoleon's perceptions and fears. So, while Napoleon was busy conquering Europe and creating an empire, his fear of cats remained a quirky part of his persona. Imagine that. The great Napoleon afraid of a mere house cat. Think you're a history buff? You've got nothing on Napoleon. This man was not just a conqueror but also a scholar with a deep fascination for ancient Egypt. His interest was so intense that during his invasion of Egypt in 1798, he didn't just bring soldiers, he also brought along a team of scholars and artists. Their mission? To document the art, culture, and natural history of this ancient civilization. The result was a comprehensive work known as the Description de l'Egypte. But Napoleon's Egyptian obsession didn't stop at books. He took it a step further. He started incorporating Egyptian motifs and symbols into his clothing and decor. Sphinxes, pyramids, hieroglyphs. They became a part of his everyday life. This fascination with Egypt was more than a passing interest. It was a deep-seated admiration that shaped his life and legacy. Napoleon, the first Egyptologist. Napoleon was a man of great ambition, but did you know he once attempted suicide? Yes, it's true. When Napoleon was imprisoned on the island of Elba after his first abdication, he found himself in a state of despair. His empire had crumbled, his power diminished, and he was now confined to a small island off the coast of Italy. It was during these dark times that Napoleon attempted to take his own life. In 1814 he ingested a lethal dose of poison in a bid to end his suffering. But fate had other plans. The poison, having weakened over time, didn't have the intended effect. Instead of granting him a swift exit, it left him severely ill. This event, occurring in the obscure period between his two reigns, remains relatively unknown. It's a stark reminder that even the greatest of men can fall into despair, and that the human spirit, no matter how indomitable, is vulnerable to the trials of life. Even the greatest of men can fall into despair. Are you particular about your dental hygiene? So was Napoleon. Now, you wouldn't expect a military and political leader from the early 19th century to be overly concerned about dental hygiene, but Napoleon Bonaparte was full of surprises. Amidst battles and strategizing, Napoleon found time to care for his teeth, a habit quite uncommon for his era. Napoleon's approach to dental care was considered advanced for the early 19th century. He regularly brushed his teeth, not with just any toothbrush, but a silver-handled one. This was quite a luxury at a time when toothbrushes were not commonly used, or even widely available. This meticulous dental hygiene routine reflects Napoleon's attention to detail, a trait that extended beyond his military strategies and into his personal life. It's a fascinating glimpse into the daily life of one of history's most iconic figures. So next time you brush your teeth, remember, you're following in the footsteps of Napoleon Bonaparte.